Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
It's going good, man. Second episode of the week type of week. We're on a different type of time in these days, TV.
Yes, you know the regular season's here when we have to drop two episodes a week. Expect to see, again, is this going to be a staple? Probably, but also it's going to be what's going to work with our timelines. We both have busy lives, but at the end of the day, we're going to try to give you as much NBA content as possible, the best NBA content possible, and this is one of those episodes where we're going to try and do the best we can with that, because we're not talking about NBA news, Jay. This is not the type of news episode that you're used to seeing from us like on Mondays. We're going to be trying to name our top 5 NBA players in 5 years. What? Yeah, that's the type of stuff you're going to get on the Wednesday podcast. So you're going to see that. We're going to introduce a new segment called the Player Spotlight. And then as a staple, we have the draft. We have the quiz to end off the episode, all that good stuff. So it's going to be another fantastic episode. Hope you guys are ready for that. But before we get into this episode, we do have to plug the socials. Remember to follow our individual accounts at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown J / the Routine Jumper. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. You have the clips. You have our mini-series throughout the week, so you don't want to miss any of that. And, of course, there's a new vlog coming out on Monday. I'm going to the Wizards game, so we're going to have vlog number 3 of the NBA season over there. If you want to support this podcast on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to this podcast on either Spotify or Apple, leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, man. First Wednesday episode. I'm hyped for one of these.
Yes, I am very excited for this. And like I mentioned off the top, we are here today to try and predict the top 5 NBA players. I mean, what is this? This is the season 2023-2024. We're looking at the season 2028-2029. That's a mouthful. It doesn't sound real right now, but we're going to be trying to predict the top 5 NBA players in this league. Jay, when you're trying to come up with this list, what type of criteria did you try to give yourself?
Yeah, man. So when you got to consider the best players in the NBA 5 years from now, you have to consider a couple of things, right? First thing, obviously, is how old are they right now? That's going to be something that's super important. If your guy is already 30 or 30 plus years old, he's going to be into his higher 30s, 35, 36, maybe even 37 years old. And here's the reality. Not everybody is LeBron James, right? So There's a reality that maybe some of these players aren't in the league anymore. Maybe they're relegated to more role player type of roles on their team. Maybe they are in situations where they are still all-star caliber players, but do we consider them as a top 5 player in the league? Those are the type of things that you have to take into consideration. Another thing I think is super important is injury history. If you're a guy who has a large injury history, it does make your ability to be a top 5 player 5 years from now much more difficult, because how long is your career really going to last? Longevity is going to be really important, because although most NBA careers for all-star caliber players at least last their first 8 seasons, because they're able to make it to at least maybe their second contract, but they usually at least get past their first rookie extension. We're talking about an 8-year chance, but there's a lot that can happen for a guy that's already on his rookie contract looking for a payday, right? So You have to keep that in consideration too. And then obviously the third and most important thing to me right now is how good are they right now with the ability to scale beyond what they already are at? Is it a player that seems like their play style is only going to get better, or can only improve, or can stand the test of time over the next 5 years? If those boxes aren't checked, then I don't think you can be the best player in the NBA. But if you're a player whose game either can expand to continue to almost supersede where the league is now, or continue to stand the test of time over the next 5 years to the point that you're still as good then as you are now, then you're definitely going to be in consideration for my list.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of the bases. But another thing is, and if you really think about the top 5 players in the league, even today, and like how we rank players now, one of my categories for that is, does their team have the chance to be like a title contender, a perennial playoff team? Because let's be honest. We look at those guys, like Devin Booker before the Suns got really good. We knew that the talent was there, but can they produce in a winning situation? It took Devin Booker until the Suns making the finals, multiple playoff runs, for him to be considered like in this upper echelon of players. So if a guy is going to be stuck in like a middling team, a bottom of the league team, then it's going to be hard for him to be really considered in this position. So we have to take that into consideration as well as all the other stuff that Jay has had. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing this episode. We're going to be going, both our 5s and both our 4s. We're going to keep going down the list until we can determine who we think in the next 5 years is going to be the best player in the league. But before we get into that, there's obviously some guys that missed the cut. So Jay, I'm going to throw this over to you. Who are maybe like 1 or 2 guys that you were thinking of putting on this list, but ultimately did not?
So 2 guys that ended up not making this list that I kind of wish would have, but I just think it's going to be interesting to see is number 1 is Zion Williamson. I think that he's a guy that deserves to be in consideration for this kind of conversation. But until we see at least 1 full season of a body of work from him, it's going to be tough to be able to truly believe he's going to be a top NBA player in this league 5 years from now. The injury history thing obviously hurts him a ton. And when you're talking about a guy who maybe has maybe 2 seasons worth of total games played over the course of a 3 to 4 year career this far into his career already, it's not looking too good for him in terms of sample size. Considering him as a top player in the NBA overall is going to be tough. Another guy that I think is going to be a little bit more interesting, but might just barely miss the cut for me, is also Ja Morant. Ja Morant is another guy who I really wanted to put on this list, and I think that his athleticism puts him in the echelon to be a dude who could be considered as, if not the top player in the league, definitely one of the top NBA guards in the NBA around that time frame. But his play style is very chaotic, which is something that I personally have lived through with his typical comparison in Derrick Rose, right? So that's something that I want to also project forward. It's not just the off the court antics and all that. Me and TV don't categorize that stuff when we talk about these kind of conversations. We focus on what happens on the floor. And for Ja Morant, he plays a very volatile style of basketball. And that's something that might not translate well 5 years from now. He's going to have to really develop it. Yeah, he might really have to start developing a 3-ball, and it's going to be really important for him to be able to catch up with the times because athletes are only getting better and better with every single draft class, which also means that there's going to become a point where Ja Morant is not the most athletic guy on the floor, and that's going to matter a lot too. So those are 2 guys that just barely missed the cut for me, but definitely deserve to be talked about in the conversation.
Yeah, I really like the Zion pick as well because compared to the rest of the guys in this league, there are very few people like Zion that could just absolutely break the game. Like there's very few guys that are just game breakers, and he can be that. But the fact that he's only played I think it's like 60 something games in his career, it's like 80 something games in his career over the last 4 years or so. It's very like a telltale sign. So I understand the fact of why you wouldn't include him in the top 5. And then Ja Morant, same thing. You could see the star ability there. You see the star power, but will his game translate in 5 years? Will it be safe enough for him to so he won't garner too many injuries, a la D Rose, from 2010? Who knows? But yeah, I do like those choices. For me, one of the players I had here, funnily enough, Victor Wembanyama. I had him as a potential top 5 guy here as an honorable mention. I think that his like Zion, when you look at the overall skill set of Wembanyama, it's limitless. He could do you could put him in so many positions and he can succeed. My only worry is that I don't think the Spurs can develop a title contender / a perennial playoff team in the next 5 years for Victor to garner that praise. So I wouldn't really consider him in the top 5 just because, especially over these next 2 or maybe 1 or 2 years, they're still in the process of rebuilding, trying to build a team around him. So I just don't think he'll have the team success to kind of match up with his ability yet. But I still consider him maybe on the cusp of that. And also Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Okay.
I was really on the fence of putting Giannis in this top 5. I hate to say this, I just don't think his game is gonna age well. You got the inside presence, and then when you look around the team around him with Chris Middleton, Dame Lillard, and 5 years from now, this Milwaukee Bucks team can look very, very different. Giannis can like athleticism is a big part of his game. Is that still going to be there at like his early to mid 30s? I don't know. I think that he'll still be like a top 10 player in this league, but to be a top 5 guy, you gotta have that game breaking ability. You have to have that takeover ability on a night to night basis, constantly having your team as a title contender. Can I see that in Giannis in 5 years? Maybe, but I don't know. I just don't trust enough. That's why I also don't have him in the top 5.
That's really interesting. I guess that's a great way to kind of help us transition into our top 5, though, because both of those guys did end up cracking my list in a way that it's kind of going to be interesting to debate it back and forth now. I wouldn't say I was expecting us to have an identical list, but I think this is the first time we've ever come into these listings and had very different viewpoints on how this whole thing is scaled. So actually, instead of me starting off with mine, who is your 5th guy?
That's interesting. If both those guys are your top 5, then you definitely don't have my number 5. I got Devin Booker. As a potential top 5. Is going to be like a top 5 player for me in 5 years. I think someone with his skill set, and now we're going to see it more, and we talked about it with the point guard mentality, his ability to run the team. He could be potentially like a top point guard in this league. He has the elite 3-point shooting ability, the ability to create for himself and for others. I think that he's going to be able, especially in these next 2 to 3 years are going to be very important, especially when he has KD and Bradley Beal on his roster right now. And we can garner some championships, some more All-NBA nods, and just some crazy numbers, which we know he can be. I mean, in his 2 games this season, he's averaging like 32 points a game. He's been absolutely fantastic. But I think that he's going to have that ability to eventually lead this Phoenix Suns team going forward. And he's just as players like Steph Curry start to fade out over these next 5 years, as these other guards start to fade out, Devin Booker is going to be almost on the level of the Lukas who you probably have on this list too as well. But I think that he's going to be reaching that sort of status, and I wouldn't be surprised over the next 5 years you see multiple top 3 finishes and MVP for Devin Booker as well. So I have him on my number 5. The Suns are in win now mode right now, and this guy's far from, he's still going to be right in the middle of his prime 5 years from now. So give me Devin Booker.
So that's funny because that's who I have at 5.
Oh.
So again, this is where things get interesting because I believe that Devin Booker has the capability to be the best guard of the NBA outside of maybe Luka Doncic, who will probably come up later in this list. Honestly, in 5 years, I think the main guys that come into conversation when you talk about this kind of listing is probably Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Devin Booker, and Luka Doncic. I think those are going to be the top 3 guys if we're talking about the guard position, which if you consider Luka Doncic as a guard, because we know how that goes in terms of, voting systems and stuff like that. But if you consider him as a guard, I think those are going to be the 3 guys that are vying for the top spot 5 years from now in terms of the guard position. I think Devin Booker has a really good shot at that. I left Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off in terms of my honorable mentions just because I felt like with Devin Booker being at my 5, him and SGA were very interchangeable. I feel like you could almost put, from my 5, you could almost put SGA / Devin Booker. It's kind of whoever I think the second best guard in the league is going to be at that time. Yeah. But I think Devin Booker right now has the leg up because we've seen him play in high stakes basketball games on a larger front. I think a lot of people forget that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has played in the postseason, but he has not played as the primary option in the way that he now is under this current regime. Yeah. Of course. So with that being the case, that obviously knocks him down a peg in that regard. But I think and I think I even made this argument on podcast, some would make the argument that SGA is already the better guard now over Devin Booker. Now that's debatable. Is SGA better than Devin Booker right now? That's a debate in its own right. But I think 5 years from now, we could really see a battle between those two in ways that many kind of once had Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell bouncing back and forth as to who the best was. But as of right now, when you talk about establishment within the league, overall skill set, and what we've seen on the biggest stage, I am going to put Devin Booker in the lead with SGA as a weird little 5B caveat. But Devin Booker was my answer as well at 5. So that's interesting. Okay, cool.
This is an interesting start to this list. Yeah. Because I'm on to my number 4, and it's SGA. I think I have SGA there at my 4 position. I think with the point guard position again, with the fading out of these like top guards in the league right now, SGA's playstyle feels like it's gonna last for the next 15 years because he's not super fast. He's not like one of those guys who's gonna be like just bulldozing his way to the rim. He's slow. He's methodical. He has the mid-range jumper. He can draw fouls with the best of them, and he has a low-key good three-point shot. So when you mention all those factors, mix him with a good leader, mixed in with the fact that the Thunder, I believe in 5 years, they're going to be freaking like perennial contenders. True. They have all of these draft picks. They have all of this equity. If they don't turn this into a star or some sort of like mini super team over the next 5 years, I think that this is a disappointment to Sam Presti. So over the next 5 years, you have Shai Gilgeous running the show. You have a really good roster built around him. Depending on who stays, who goes. I think that you'll consider like SGA in the conversation for best guard in the league, potentially best player in the league, just because he's one of those players that puts up numbers in a hurry and it doesn't feel like he's trying. Like in Nikola Jokic, he's like getting into that place like where his like game is just like so methodical and so like natural that he's just gonna like pick up numbers like here and there, and he's gonna have crazy numbers every night, and you're like, how did he get to like 37 and 8? Like that's the type of player Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is gonna be. He's just gonna be dominant in that sort of fashion. And the Thunder being a great team moving forward, having one of the brightest futures, I think there's a chance that he could crack a top 3, but I'm gonna have him at number 4 in my spot. So give me SGA at 4. I really have high hopes for this guy.
Man, that's really interesting because I'm a really big SGA fan, and I think in a weird way you almost in a way might have made a really good argument for me to bump him in as the 5th guy instead of Devin Booker. And that's interesting. I'm going to leave it as 5A, 5B at the moment, and we'll see how this list progresses. But I think that's really interesting because now my 4th guy is somebody you left off, which is Giannis Antetokounmpo now.
Okay.
So my 4th guy is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it's because I believe that despite the fact that he's going to be like older, and I understand your point that you made earlier talking about the idea of his play style not aging well. He is only going to still be 29 years old. It's going to be pre-30, which still means that there's going to be relatively athleticism-wise, he's still going to be in a good place overall. The way I view Giannis Antetokounmpo scaling is at 29 years old, he just becomes the best defensive big man in the NBA. So what I think it translates to is Giannis Antetokounmpo goes from being a lead ball handler that just so happens to be a big guy to transitioning into 2010 Dwight Howard. Like, I think that's what Giannis has the capability of doing, is being one of the best two-way bigs in the NBA still, but doing it in a really unconventional way to what he does now. What he does now is unconventional in the sense that we never see 6'11" guys sprint down the floor like gazelles and stuff like that like he does now. But I think he can carve out a really elite level spot for himself still in the league at age 29, essentially playing the way Dwight Howard used to play when he won three DPOIs.
Yeah, but is that like a top 5 player in the league though? And also, I was looking at your point. He's like turning 29 in a month. So by the time he gets to like 5 years from now, he's gonna be like 34 years old, like almost 34 years old.
He turns 29 in a month?
Like in a month or two. He turns like he was born in 94, so he's gonna turn like 30 like next year. So that's gonna be like, I don't know if you want to like switch it up because of that, because like, it's gonna be, that's why I was like thinking about him. Like I think he's still gonna be like an elite level NBA player. I just think top 5 might be a stretch for him at that point in his career.
I don't know. I think I'm still going to lean on it because I feel like even at 34 years old, at the end of the day, I think his play style's transition ability, I think his ability to transition his play style is going to be the most important part. Yeah. And I also will give you the credit that top 4, there's a world where maybe it's going to come down to where the value of the big man lands 5 years from now. I think that's the most important thing, because on one end, many believe that the big man was phasing out, right? On the opposite end, there's been this weird revolution that has actually boomeranged the big man back into a lot of our top 5 conversations when we talk about who some of the best players in the league are nowadays, right? Yeah. So we're having this conversation now about who the top 5 players in the NBA are in 2023. you could make an argument that 3 out of those 5 guys play center, probably.
Yeah, no,
at least 2.
2 of them for sure. 2.
Right, at least 2, right? So I think, and you have to think about it, they play in a relatively under control kind of way. Giannis Antetokounmpo probably is a better defensive player than both Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. I believe at 33 years old, if he still has relatively any form of the athleticism we already see now, if he takes more of a role as a center, I think he could still assert himself as one of the best players in the NBA still.
I like that. I like that move of him like moving to the center, because I think like you mentioned, in like 4 or 5 years from now, him being kind of that like secondary ball handler in the offense is probably unrealistic at that time. But him being like still an elite defensive player, still having like very good playmaking ability, being able like, I mean, he's still, no matter what, he's still gonna be like 6'11" with a 7'7" wingspan or whatever. He's gonna be like near impossible to stop in the paint. So I like that. I like that point. I still think like, you know, again, top 5 might be like a bit kind of like maybe a bit too far, but I still think he'll be like an elite level NBA player by that time. But top 5 might be on the border for me.
I feel you. I think it's gonna come down to whether or not him transitioning to center turns him into a Rudy Gobert-esque player, or if it just makes him a more juiced version of a guy like Joel Embiid or Dwight Howard from the early 2010s, right? If he's a 2010 to 20, if he's like a 2008, what's it like 2008, 2009 esque to like 2011 version of Dwight Howard, we're talking about a guy that like is a 20+ point per game scorer, double-digit rebounder, anywhere between 2 to 3 blocks per game, high effective field goal percentage, in the DPOY conversation every single year. That's still a top player in the NBA.
Yeah, and he also finished top 3 in MVP voting a couple of times. So yeah, I feel you.
So it's gonna come down to the version of his transition. Is he more Rudy Gobert or is he more early Dwight Howard? That's the question.
That's fair. Okay, let's move on to my number 3. And I mean, SGA just barely didn't make your list. I'm surprised to see because that means one of my top 3 guys might not be on your list.
Okay.
Which is kind of like interesting to me. My number 3 is Nikola Jokic. The only thing stopping Nikola Jokic from playing is if he wants to retire in the next 3 years. That's the only thing that's going to stop Nikola Jokic, because we just talked about Giannis and how I feel like his play would ages gracefully. What's going to stop 34, 35-year-old Jokic from still dotting people up 10 assists per game? Nothing's going to stop him from barely jumping up the floor, but still getting 12 rebounds. Just those driveway dad sort of fadeaway shots. None of that's going to change in 5 years. Nothing about Nikola Jokic's game is telling me this man is going to regress in 5 years. It's going to be the same. He's going to be just as dominant. The only thing that's stopping him is himself, if he thinks basketball is too boring, or if his team starts to maybe regress a little bit. That's the only 2 things that are stopping Nikola Jokic. He is still going to be one of the best playmakers, one of the best rebounders, one of the best scorers in the league, and his impact on the court, we see it every single year. No one has a bigger offensive impact in basketball than Nikola Jokic right now, and I don't think that's going to change in 5 years. Honestly, him and anyone from this top 3, I feel they're going to be interchangeable. I have Jokic there just because I feel like there's going to be maybe some mini drop-off with the Nuggets compared to the 2 guys who I think that their teams are just going to get better over these next 5 years. But Jokic, all the stuff that we know him and love him from now is going to continue to be there in 5 years. But I just I just wouldn't be surprised in 3 years. Jokic is like, yeah, I'm bored of America. I'm bored of basketball. I just want to I have generational wealth. I'm going to go back to my horses in Serbia and just live the rest of my life there and never be heard from again. You thought that Tim Duncan wasn't freaking talked about after his career? Nikola Jokic, we're going to forget that he was a 3-time MVP, and we're going to be like, where is he right now? He's not going to have any social medias. We're going to have no idea where his whereabouts are. But I think that's the only thing stopping him. But if he's still playing 5 years from now, he's still going to be the best center in the league. And, man, he's still going to have that very similar impact if the Nuggets can still stay competitive.
Okay, so this is where we have a little bit of a disconnect, and it's actually because I'm higher on Jokic than you, which is the weird part about this. Because again, I think based off the way we had this conversation, somebody gets left off, and that's going to be funny to have that convo because you might be able to get them back on my list. We'll see how it goes, but we're gonna have that conversation. Jokic is actually a little bit higher on my list
Okay,
here.
so we'll talk about him a bit more when you get to your part. Yeah.
So this is where Victor finally shows up for me.
Fair.
Victor is at 3 for me, and this is because I think the reality of Victor Wembanyama is that he is going to be a top 2, top 3 guy in this league. I just think he's going to be that special. He's already been this impactful early on in the year. You've got Draymond Green. I saw a quote from him earlier that said Victor Wembanyama and the Thompson twins have him worrying about how much longer he's going to be able to make defensive all-NBA defensive teams. Like, that's the kind of pressure that this rookie class, but specifically a guy like Victor Wembanyama, who does play a similar position to Draymond Green in terms of the front court, that's the kind of pressure he's already putting on current NBA players as a defensive presence. We talked about it all last podcast in glowing fashion about how absurd it is that he has a 30% usage rate as a guy who's not an on-ball creator for the San Antonio Spurs. Lord knows how KD like he's going to be in terms of having an on-ball presence 5 years from now. If Greg Popovich or whoever the San Antonio Spurs coach is by that point decides to fully unleash Victor Wembanyama as an offensive threat, right? Yeah. There's a lot to like about what Victor can do on both sides of the ball, and I'm definitely gassing him up for what I think he is capable of. The two-way ability matters a ton to me, and I think that's really important. But I think the fact that you can plug him in as a superstar that fits well in any kind of system is also really important. That's going to come up a little later in terms of a notable guy that I guess doesn't make this list. But neither here nor there. That's actually why I have Victor so much higher. He was a guy who actually went from being in my honorable mention conversation to slowly creeping up the list when you think about what his capabilities are 5 years from now as a guy who's only going to be given more and more with every single season in terms of what he's going to be allowed to do and what kind of studio space he's going to be allowed to explore.
You're really making me think of like moving around this because honestly, you're right. And we haven't even seen him in his NBA body yet. This is a guy coming over as a freaking 19-year-old. Imagine him hit his belt at 24. If he can stay healthy. Let's put a caveat on that. If he can stay healthy. Because you know how with these big men, you always have to have that little worry for them. But I know what you mean. Like his game-breaking ability. I saw it firsthand when watching that Raptor game. Like, you think you're open with Victor? Nah, you're not. Like, he has that thing where he covers so much space so quickly. I feel like pump fakes are irrelevant for someone like him because he just has the makeup ability because of how long he is. Yeah. Like he could break the game on both sides of the court. So I like that I just don't know if the Spurs could create the ideal like lineup for him in these next 5 years to really showcase his skills. If they're able to do that, he could probably be in the top 5. I still think he's going to be like very shortly a top 10 player in the league, maybe in a couple of years. But top 5, that's where it kind of like, again, draw the border. But I do like that pick over there at number 3. Jay, we still haven't figured out who I have on this list and you don't. This is kind of interesting because you also have, you still have, okay, let's see. If this guy's on your list, I'd be surprised then. I got Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum on this list. And I got him at number 2 because, man, he already is building that playoff resume now. This Celtics team is going to be like in like second round to NBA finals like potential every single year for like as long as they can keep Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown together, because they've shown that they're able to make moves around them. They've shown that they're able to create an ideal situation for these guys to play in. And Jason Tatum every year is proving time in, time out that he's going to improve his game. Jay, have you seen his efficiency this year? 54% from the field, 42% from 3, 82% at the free throw line. This guy is like putting up hella efficient numbers. His 3-point shooting is getting better. And when I watch these games, this guy has like all NBA defensive potential. I don't think he's there yet, but there's going to be a point in time where you're going to have those conversations where he might be a consistent second team guy. He might be like, you're going to see him guard like in maybe conference finals, NBA final games where he's going to be the one defending the best player on the other side. Jason Tatum has elite scoring ability. He's able to hit the 3 ball at a consistent rate. The only thing I would want to see him improve a little bit is his playmaking, and that was criticism of him over the last 2 years, but I think that still could be worked on. But man, in terms of like where the small forward position is going over the next 5 years, we might see KD either stay here at a pretty old age, or LeBron out the league. Jason Tatum's up next, and he's gonna be that guy who's gonna be dominating at that frame, gonna be a nonstop scoring machine, and he's gonna be able to just affect the game like on a massive scale on the offensive side of the floor while giving you elite defense in 5 years. And this Boston Celtics team, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Give me Jason Tatum as my top 2 guy in 2028.
So I guess this is where I kind of round out my list because I'm at my final 2. So Nikola Jokic was my number 2.
Yeah.
And Jason Tatum is my number 1.
Oh my goodness. Let's talk Jokic, because that means my number 1's not on your list. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's talk Jokic. Let's talk Jokic.
So my case for Jokic is similar to yours in the fact that I think that his game is just simply going to translate. I think he's going to be a top big regardless because of the fact that he, one, has the longevity that most NBA superstars in this day and age just do not have. He practically doesn't miss games at all, and he tends to only miss games by the power of the Denver Nuggets making the choice for him. He's going to be a team player that is able to create a system for any version of what the Denver Nuggets or any franchise that he plays for has. I don't necessarily think that the Denver Nuggets have to have great overall talent to be an effective or even playoff caliber team around Nikola Jokic, because I think similar to certain players we've seen around us throughout NBA history, being a system can mean enough to be able to make the players around you better if that is the way your game is oriented, right? Steve Nash is a perfect example of this. And I hate to put Nikola Jokic in that kind of boat, but Steve Nash, Magic Johnson, players of that ilk, where your overall skill set actually uplifts those around you because it's tailor-made for others to benefit off of your abilities, right? So that's what I think is going to be important for Nikola Jokic because of the fact that he already does not rely on athleticism as a major part, if any part, of his overall play style on either side of the ball. Then you put together his IQ along with the fact that he is an overall team player. He is going to be a guy that is able to lead playoff teams on a consistent basis. And I think that that's just going to be really important for somebody when we're having this kind of conversation, because the team aspect of this that you speak on, this is kind of where my top 2 ended up becoming really important, because the question was whether or not the way a guy plays is conducive to building a championship roster for the long haul. And I think Nikola Jokic is a perfect pillar for that. And then we transition over to Jason Tatum, who just spoke on at your number 2. I think Jason Tatum has the chance to be the best two-way player in the entire NBA. The way we talk about Paul George, the way we talk about Kawhi Leonard, the way we once talked about LeBron James, that's who I think that Jason Tatum can be. And Jason Tatum actually fits more of the mold of what I looked at when I was talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo being still relatively young. Jason Tatum won't even be 30 by that 2027, 2028 season. That's insane to think about in its own front. He's improving as a three-point shooter. His passing is improving. His off-the-ball movement is getting better. His overall stats have gotten better every single season, and he's made progression in a way that his team has been a championship caliber contender practically since the year he was drafted, if not at least a perennial playoff team since he was drafted. That means that he is a winning player. I think he has real championship DNA, so to speak, and I think it's just going to come down to being able to put all the pieces together. This is the first time that we've seen the Boston Celtics take a risky swing, and so far it looks like it's playing out the way you would expect these kind of things to play out, where when you to go against status quo, which for them was running it back with the same roster and saying, hey, we can just continue internal development. Every year we're going to get closer and closer. They came to the realization that in this league, you're going to need a lot more than just growing up to get good. And although Jason Tatum has gotten better, obviously the team around him also matters in terms of how that leads to a championship. So it seems like Boston now is locked in a way where I think they're going to really be playing for chips for the next 4 to 5 years. And Jason Tatum is going to be a spearhead of that. That's why I have him at the top. I think he's going to be a guy that, I mean, he's been playing winning basketball since the literal time he got drafted.
He got on the court. Exactly.
Yeah, the minute he touched Boston, he's been playing winning basketball. I think when you talk about 5 years from now, still not even being 30 years old, I think it only goes up.
100%. I think, again, he's just someone who's just going to keep getting better and just keep learning from every single experience he has. And when you think of the Boston team and just their timeline of everyone that's there, it just fits. Everything just fits together. This team is just not going anywhere. So that's why, like I mentioned, 3-1 is very interchangeable for me. But Tatum being at number 2, there's a very good chance he could be at number 1 as well. I truly believe that. But man, we have gone to that point. We're at number 1. And now that I know your list, you don't have my number 1 guy. Give me Luka Doncic. Give me Luka Doncic. And I'm excited to hear your rebuttal, but this is what I see in Luka's future. This is like kind of my, what's it called? My ball, that mystical ball type of thing. I'm trying to like project into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Luka Doncic is an exceptional player. The talent is there. We don't have to talk about it. We know what he could do, especially on the offensive end. How long is this going to keep on in Dallas where they're not going to put the right team around him, or he's just like, it just feels like he's putting up numbers, but it's not going to take him like closer to a championship? I feel like in these next couple of years, 2 things are going to happen. One of 2 things. One, Luka is going to flex his like superstar muscle, a la Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's going to have to force his team to make some moves. I think it's like they've been kind of like content with the fact that they have Luka, and they're kind of like leading on this chemistry thing to build for them to build to a championship team. I think eventually, if this doesn't work out, if this current core doesn't work out, then Luka's gonna flex his muscle and say, look, you want me here in Dallas for the long haul? You want me to be a Dallas lifer? Build the proper team around me. Bring in someone else. And I think Dallas is willing to do that. They know like how they can prosper with 20 years of Dirk. They want to have that same sort of success with Luka, maybe even more, maybe multiple championships. I feel like if he stays in Dallas in these next 2 to 3 years is going to be a title contender because he wants it to happen, and I think Mark Cuban and the Dallas front office is going to make it happen. But if it doesn't do that, Luka's going to find his way into a contender. Somehow, some way, you know how this NBA works, that a minute a trade request happens and these contenders see like a top player in the league available with the capabilities of Luka Doncic, who is a perennial 30-point per game scorer, a near triple-double machine every single night. There's going to be a team that's willing to meet his demands, to build the team around him the way he sees fit. Luka Doncic is the system to the team, but I believe that there's a way that you can build a team around him. You got the closest with that Dallas team a couple of years ago, but if you pair him with another great star on his team, his ability to play make for others and also just completely like take over an offense in general, I think is going to be elite. And he's showing this year that his shot making, his decision making is just getting a lot better. He's getting more efficient this year. I think that continues to go up. He's only 24 years old, and he's going to understand what it takes to play winning basketball as his career goes along. He has the most game-breaking ability to me in terms of everyone on this list. And I think that eventually, in 5 years or not, whether it's in Dallas or not, he's going to be a part of a perennial contender. Give me Luka Doncic at number 1.
And see, I think the part where you ended at is where I think the volatility for me happens, where I think Luka Doncic could be as high as number 1, but I think he also could be as low as not on my list as he is right now. And I think that volatility comes from the fact that his play style creates the question of what is a viable team around Luka Doncic. That's the question that then gets established. And I think the perfect foil, I guess, so to speak, to compare him to is the person we've always compared him to, James Harden. When we talk about his overall gameplay style, yes, I think that Luka Doncic has played much better in playoff series, in playoff games, big moments than James Harden. But what has it always came down to in terms of his effectiveness on the floor outside of three-point shooting? It's the fact that he dominates the ball in a way that he becomes so much of the system that this team is unable to be an effective top 5 offense on a given season if it's not strictly based off the strength of him carrying them from a season-to-season basis. The question is 5 years from now, how capable, because we already have things about Luka Doncic when it comes to things like being in shape and different stuff like that that's already been a question early in his career. How long is Luka Doncic going to be able to play hero ball? before it becomes old. We've already seen in 3 to 4 seasons of him being in the NBA, the luster of being the it kid wonder boy on the block is already slowly diminishing. TV, we talked about this when we talked about our MVP odds. Luka Doncic went from the last 2 to 3 years being arguably number one in all voting in preseason as the MVP favorite to only getting 4% of the votes this past summer coming into this year. People are already starting to wonder whether or not Luka Doncic is just going to be the it kid that puts up 30 points a night, but can't necessarily raise you to a championship caliber team. I think if we're already having that conversation about him as it is, I think that's only going to become more and more difficult as he becomes more heliocentric, as he becomes more important to winning basketball games, as he maybe becomes more disgruntled if his team is not good enough around him in order to elevate them to championship status. I think those are a lot of things to be able to worry about Luka Doncic, where I think the skill, similar to James Harden, the skill will translate to being a top 5 player, but on the floor, will we feel like he's a guy that if you have that guy on your team, you can win a championship? I don't know.
And this is why this season with Kyrie Irving is so important. If he can make this work with Kyrie Irving, then I believe that he can be in a system where he can be him and another either dominant ball handler or another top 10 player in this league. If he's able to make this work and work his game off ball, which honestly so far this season, he's him and Kyrie have been taking turns in terms of playmaking ability. It's been elite so far this year, especially on the offensive end. Their playstyles together have been elite when they're both on the floor. The question is this going to be translatable for the rest of the season? If that's the case, and I believe that this may result to a 50-win year for the Dallas Mavericks. If he can make this work and translate into the playoffs, now that you kind of see how he is with a legitimate center in Derek Lively, and he's just going to keep on growing with the team.
Right.
You could finally see the vision of what a elite Luka Doncic team is. And if this can work this year and the Mavs can build off this, Luka Doncic is going to be a top player in the league. I believe that there's this is the start of it, where you have a team that probably the best team that Luka's been around ever since he came into the league. Mm-hmm. And now everything is to start to form together, and this is where we're going to see Luka at his best. If this is becoming a problem, you can see the disgruntledness, you can see that. I see what you mean, but I think that this is the start, and this is where Luka Doncic is going to find himself really understanding what it means to play winning basketball when you have the right people around you. You have your lob threat. You have your secondary guy who can take over at the end of games. You have the 3-point shooting ability around you. You added Grant Williams. You have Tim Hardaway Jr. This team is ideally built around him, and I think it's going to work out this year, and I think they're just going to keep on building from that.
And this is, I will place this caveat that this is a perfect season to be able to make me eat crow in a kind of conversation like this, because I'm making my evaluation strictly based off what I've already seen from Luka Doncic in his career prior to this season, because I can't utilize a 6 to 7 game sample size as what I think will translate long term, not only in terms of his attitude towards the Dallas Mavericks, but also his attitude towards the play style that Jason Kidd is trying to promote, where right now they have 4 double-digit scorers, which is insane to think about when you have Luka Doncic on your team with the way that he typically plays basketball. They've got them playing much better in terms of playing together, and I love to see that. It's going to be important that something like that sticks in order for Luka Doncic to continue his development. We know that he's one of the best isocentric players in the NBA already. That's been established. It's the same thing like James Harden. James Harden, he said it himself in his intro conference with the LA Clippers. He is a system. I believe the same thing can be said about Luka Doncic. He is a system, but we also have seen through similar to James Harden that system can have a ceiling on it. And sometimes that ceiling is much lower than championship basketball, much lower than championship basketball. And you just wonder, as he continues to age and the roster around him continues to diminish, depending on how the Mavericks decide to do business, because we've seen them play hardball and we've also seen them bend to the whim. So it depends. But these are all things, and that's a huge point in its own sense, is how will the Dallas Mavericks act throughout this entire time frame as well? They're the ones that make me worry more than anyone about the way that this is treated. Because if you incorporate that, building around Luka Doncic is a hard question to solve as it is, right?
Yeah.
I think as time progresses, it's only good as you become more and more familiar with Luka's established play style. It's only going to become harder to truly formulate a contending roster around him. So it's kind of like handling the business now, because it's only going to be harder and harder to figure him out as he becomes more established.
I see what you mean, but I think that like this season more than anything is going to be more eye opening than it is going to be like, oh, I feel like the options are going to be less. I think this is going to like really like broaden the horizons for like what you could build around Luka Doncic than the former, where it's like, okay, this is like only like a specific amount of players. I think Luka's going to learn how to play with different players here, especially now with Kyrie Irving. As long as he can stay healthy, I think it's going to work, and I think this is going to start where we're going to have Luka in those like top conversations very, very soon.
Yeah,
man, this is a damn good topic. Let us know down below if you like any of our lists. If you have any players that we didn't even mention, please let us know down below who you think your top 5 players are in the next 5 years. Jay, we're going to be starting off with a new segment here on the Wednesday show, and we're going to be calling it the TV and J Player Spotlight, where every week we're going to be alternating and putting a player, maybe who knows, play past, present, or like past or present, and we're going to be giving them like a dedicated topic, just talking about them and seeing where that goes. So Jay, you got the first week. Jay, your player spotlight. Who are we talking about today?
So we're talking about Indiana Pacers center Miles Turner. He actually recently was on the Gilbert Arenas podcast. I think it was Gil's Arena. And he recently spoke on the idea that he believes that he is one of the top centers in the NBA. And so far in this league, I feel like he's playing like a guy who at least has a real conversation for it. Don't get me wrong. Jokic is here. Embiid is here. Anthony Davis recently got hurt. So, I mean, there's that. But Miles Turner is playing the most complete version of basketball I think he's played in his entire career. The overall statistics might not say this is his best season, but I think it is his most overall built season so far in the early going. 16.4 points per game, nearly 2 assists, nearly 2 blocks, nearly 9 rebounds. He's offensive rebounding relatively well on par with what he normally does, shooting from the free throw line at nearly 78%. 41.4% from 3, which is a career high on 4 attempts per game. That's very good volume for a center.
Yeah.
Very good volume for him. He's doing it in very controlled spurts. He's only playing 26 minutes a game, which would be actually the second lowest of his entire career. Second lowest overall since his rookie season, where he only played nearly 23 minutes. He's been really effective on very low volume, and he's shooting on nearly 53% from the field as well. He's a guy who I think is just going to continue to get better with every single season as a guy that just becomes more complete as a center. And Indiana's not going to get a lot of love. Me and TV actually were talking about it pre-podcast. We realized Indiana hasn't even gotten a lot of love on this podcast, despite the fact that me and him were both really big fans of what they did this offseason. So shout out to Miles Turner, man. I think that Indiana's not going to get a ton of great media coverage on a grand scale this season, but have no fear. The Hit Your Free Throw podcast is here, I guess, because I think that they are going to be a real talking point for at least a good portion of the season.
Yeah, no, Miles Turner he's been like bigging up his defensive capabilities for years now. And we've seen it. I mean, like, I don't think he's gotten even like much, all defensive love. I don't think he hasn't even made an all defensive team in his career. Mm-hmm. And what I see in Miles Turner, and tell me if I'm wrong, Jay, but I feel like he can be a Jaren Jackson Jr. type, but with less fouling. I really do see that. I do see that in Miles Turner. I think if you built the system the way that Memphis has, you put a big burly center there, someone to set the screens, to get the box outs and all that, like a Steven Adams. Over there in Indy, pair him up and maybe let Miles Turner be the roamer per se. We use that term a lot here on the Jeffrey's podcast, especially when we talk about Jaren Jackson and Giannis and all that. But if you can turn him into the roamer, someone who can occasionally switch onto the perimeter, because he's shown that he can do that role pretty well as well, I think that he could be a top defensive big in this league, and I think he has more offensive capabilities, like especially like in a more consistent basis than someone like a Jaren Jackson Jr. I feel like this whole like Indiana Pacers career for Miles Turner, he's been there for like the last like 7-8 years. I feel like he just has like, I don't think he's like a true center. Make him like in a 2 big man lineup. He's already mobile enough as is to like work well defensively and be that roamer. Pair him up with, again, a big burly center over there in Indiana. I think you can unlock something there with Miles Turner, and he could be truly, that number 2. If it's not Benedict Mathurin, he could truly be that number 2 beside Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch what the Indiana Pacers decide to do this season. They've already gotten off to a relatively decent start. Obviously, they got slapped up earlier last week or something like that in
Yeah,
terms
but
of.
then they slapped up the Knicks like
I
like
was gonna say, but they surely got their get back, so that's something to be proud of as well. But I like what Indiana's putting together. I think it's gonna be something that progresses relatively well. Miles Turner is a guy who I think is just gonna continue to be kind of underrated within this league because the center position is already kind of oddly devalued outside of the top guys that get conversated about.
yeah.
Man, he just falls into that category with guys like Jared Allen, Nicholas Claxton, dudes that I think are going to be really good centers for a good period of time, but just aren't going to get the kind of national media coverage they deserve because of the fact that they're not putting up 30 plus a night, you know?
Yeah, but I think like at least with him, he has the ability to like improve his scoring averages if given the opportunity. It's
Right,
already
right.
it's already tough enough that you have Tyrese Halliburton like averaging like 22, 24 points a game this setting, and then you're gonna get bad Brandon Mathurin like chucking away anyway. So it's gonna be tough for him. It's gonna be tough, but I really do think that if given the opportunity, and like I said, Indiana, think about that, two big man lineup like they have over there in Memphis. Like it could work. It could work, and I think that Miles Turner could take his game to the next level if he like has like the right partner with him in the front court. But we'll have to wait and see. We don't doesn't get talked about much, but I believe that he is a very good center in this league, and he's talking himself up for good reason. He's very very good in this position. Again, like you said, very very undervalued. But yeah, give us your thoughts on Miles Turner. I mean, like down below, he doesn't get talked much. Do you think he'll maybe be better off on a different system? Who knows? But let us know down below. It's gonna be my turn next week, so you're gonna see what that player spotlight is gonna be come that episode. Jay, we are moving on to the final segment of the show, and we're gonna be discussing our next NBA draft. And this one is a little bit of a mouthful. So it's not gonna it's the type of draft where I think in this one we might just do, back and forth. We're not gonna do the whole serpentine thing.
Mhm.
But what we're gonna do here is try to build the team around Victor Wembanyama, right? So he's already a staple in both of our teams.
Mhm.
But we've seen the Spurs do this with Tim Duncan in the past. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna try to build the best team for Victor Wembanyama, kind of like recreating the Spurs dynasty, but with him at the center. What do we mean by that? Tony Parker and Monty Ginobili were freaking like late, like first and second round picks in this team. So we're gonna have a team built around Victor Wembanyama, all under 25, by the way. That's the first caveat. But then we're only allowed to pick 2 first round guys. So 2 first round picks that were non the lottery, 1 second rounder non the lottery, and someone who was undrafted. The Spurs have had a history of just nailing picks at like the most random parts of the draft. So we're gonna
Mhm.
try and build the ultimate team for Wembanyama using the player pool that fits these requirements. So again, we have 2 first round picks non the lottery under 25 as an option. We have a second rounder who again has to be under 25 and also an undrafted guy. Jay, how do you feel about this draft?
Yeah, man, when you sent me this, we had to flesh this one out pretty deep because this
Yeah.
was one of those where I thought it was going to be really interesting. But then when we started adding the caveats, I was like, okay, we're going to have to dig really deep into the well. I'm really excited to go about this because, again, it's one of those drafts where we're not going to be picking a lot of like all-star caliber guys, and putting them around Victor Wembanyama helps a lot.
Yeah, like, do you really want to have anyone really stepping on Wemby's toes? No, you want this guy to freaking flourish the best you can. So these guys around him, yes, they're not going to be like the top 10, top 20 players in the league, but these are going to be serviceable, and hopefully we can build a championship sort of contender around Victor with these parameters in mind. You know how this draft goes. Jay gets the first pick, and then me, and we're going to go back and forth after that. But Jay gets the first overall pick. Who are you going to go to pair up with Victor Wembanyama? You can play him at power forward, you can play him at center. Some might play him small forward, but who are you going to pair up with him?
Yeah, man. So the first guy that I'm gonna go with, and we said 25 or under, right? Just want to make sure I got that
25
one.
yes.
25 or under. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get the best 25 and under undrafted guy I can grab. Give me Austin Reeves. I thought he should have went to San Antonio this offseason anyway. I think he's gonna be a great fit next to Wemby. Give me Austin Reeves for my first pick.
I like that pick. He was definitely on my radar for someone to pair up with Wemby, but yeah, taking the best undrafted guy under 25 right now, a very, very good choice. So yeah, Austin Reeves is a great pick next to him. Jay, I'm going to end up, instead of going the undrafted route, I'm going to go with the best player of the bunch. This guy's having an elite season next to Joel Embiid. So I think him and Victor Wembanyama, that should be a pretty insane duo if you can get these two together. Give me Tyrese Maxey to run the one. He just needed James Harden out of there to spread his wings, averaging like 26 points a game, almost like 8 or 9 assists. This guy is an elite point guard in this league and will be going forward. So let me pair him next to Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, Victor's gonna love Tyrese, man. That's one of them ones.
Yeah.
I think the next guy that I'm going to go with is I need to be able to get Vic another guy defensively that can really help him out on the perimeter. Give me my boy out in OKC. Actually no, because he was undrafted too. So let me not use that one because I was gonna go with my boy Lou, but Lou was undrafted. Let's go BPA, man. I'm gonna go ahead and use one of my first rounders. I'm gonna go a little bit smaller in the backcourt, but I love what he's doing so far this season. I'll go ahead and take Desmond Bane.
That's a really good choice. Yeah, Desmond Bane. Again, and one of those few guys that fit this criteria who has all-star potential. So him versus Wembanyama, someone who can play well off the ball as well, would be really good. So Desmond Bane, very good pick. For myself, I think that Victor Wembanyama could be the defensive anchor of this team. And I think that this guy can hold his own on the inside, but I think that this guy's playmaking ability next to Victor could be scary. Give me with my center position, Alperen Şengün.
Oh my God.
Alperen Şengün and Victor Wembanyama. This guy's like 7'1", 7'2", paired up with 7'5" Victor. He can score. He can score for sure. But give me baby Jokic, the guy who's just gonna be out there in the in-between zones, just picking apart defenses. Gonna get Victor Wembanyama. Imagine the big-to-big action. Getting a 7-foot Alperen Şengün throwing a lob to Victor over there. Oh, that seems like a nasty combo. Give me Alperen Şengün as my next pick, next to Victor.
Oh, man. Alperen Şengün is a good, solid pick because I think he's going to need a solid big next to him. It's going to be super important for him, too. Oh, wait, I need me a three-point shooter. Low-key bad, but...
Hey, Desmond Bane is one of the best in the league. Honestly, he is one of the best in the league.
I'm going to go ahead and get one of the better three-point shooters on the wing that I can think of that I think also is going to be one of the best two-way wings soon in this league. Get healthy, my boy. Give me Trey Murphy from the Pelicans.
Oh, I like that pick. I really do like that pick. This should have been his year, especially now that Zion and like all of them are here. He would have been perfect next to these guys, but again, got injured. Hopefully he can get healthy, but that's a very good pick over there. My next pick, I got a second. I think I have a second rounder left and an undrafted guy. I'm gonna go with my second round pick here. Do I? No, I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with my second round pick guy here, and I'm actually gonna go with one of my own, the Toronto Raptors. Give me Gary Trent Jr. Just someone who doesn't need the ball all the time, can camp out there at the 3-point line. He has the defensive ability, the intensity. I don't think he has maybe as big of ability as some other guys on this in the list. But Gary Trent Jr., second round pick, 33rd overall pick. Give me him. I think he would just be someone who could just like be there. He has eyes all over the court with Wemby, Şengün, and Tyrese Maxey. He's just gonna get open shot after open shot with all those offensive options. So give me Gary Trent Jr.
Man. I think the one thing I'm worried about my team is whether or not we're a little too small with all the guards. But at the same time,
there's a good second round like pick center I think you could possibly go with.
Yeah, I was thinking if we're thinking the same guy that he was one of those dudes that came up, and I'm just wondering whether or not I go him or I go another wing and just go ahead and just like have 5 out demons and then just have Wembanyama on the inside.
Hey, give Wemby as much space on the inside. That's actually not a bad choice.
You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna give him some flexibility, but I'm also gonna get another guy who's clearly shown capability as a dude who can play like 1 through 4 down the roster. Give me Terrence Mann as my second rounder.
Okay, I like that. The versatility of Terrence Mann, the untouchable on the LA Clippers.
Mr. Untouchable, yes sir.
Mr. Untouchable, like that pick. And I think that rounds out your roster, right?
Mm-hmm.
That rounds out your roster. Okay, all right. I have my last pick. And I have my undrafted guy, and I'm glad I'm able to draft him because this guy's gonna be like a 5 to 8 time all defensive player by the end of his career. the perfect guy to defend the perimeter to funnel the defense to Victor, and he's going to get 5 blocks a game. Give me Herb Jones. Herb
Yeah.
Jones to man the 3 position. He is an elite defender. He's shown that since his first year, and he's slowly but surely getting in a little bit of an offensive game, which is not necessary for this team, but will be definitely helpful. Give me Herb Jones at my 3 position. I'm loving my team. Jay, let's hear your team and see how you build on Wembanyama.
All right. So my team is going to be, I guess should I read them out in terms of where they were drafted or not drafted, or just read it as the lineup that I got?
Just read it as the lineup. Just read it as the lineup.
All right. So the way that I'm going to end up making this lineup is going to be pretty interesting. The way I'm going to go about it is I'm going to put Austin Reeves at the 1. I'm going to put Desmond Bane at the 2. I'm going to put Trey Murphy the 3rd at the 3 position. I'm going to put Terrence Mann at the 4. And then I'm going to play Victor Wembanyama at the 5.
Okay, you're going to have to freaking match Wemby with Wemby for me, because there's no way Terrence Mann should be guarding Wembanyama over on my side. Over on my team, I'm freaking loving this team, man. Give me Tyrese Maxey over there at my 1. Gary Trent Jr. at my 2. At my 3 position, give me Herb Jones. At the 4, Victor Wembanyama. And at the center, Alperen Şengün to run the 5. This team is very offensive oriented, I will say. We'll put a bunch of buckets on your head, but the defense is a little bit questionable, but we got Herb. I'll take Herb on my perimeter. So I'm liking my team. How you feeling about yours?
The interesting part about this squad is just the fact that there's a lot of versatility. Pretty much outside of maybe Austin Reeves, everybody is considered as a 2-way player in some way, shape, or form. And I think the coolest part about this team is that we're going to be able to run and get out of transition. We're not lacking offensively. We can shoot the 3 ball. And this is the kind of roster where you can give Victor Wembanyama as much space as possible. An honorable mention that didn't get picked, who I thought was a real conversation here, was Nicholas Claxton to pair next to him. That was obviously the guy that I thought would have made a lot more sense if we're talking about putting Victor at the 4. But if we're talking about letting Victor be the defensive anchor on one side and be the sole center on the defense on the offensive side, then hey man, playing 4 out and then having Victor Wembanyama, who can technically make your whole lineup 5 out. Yeah, it's a different way of play. Ironically, it's the exact opposite of how the Spurs play right now.
100%. I do like your team, though. I really do like your team. Other guys that could have got drafted here, Grant Williams, I think would be a nice fit next to him. Kevin Huerter. You mentioned Lou Dort. I was thinking about him being my undrafted guy. He was on my short list. And at the point guard position, even someone like Anthony Simons, I think would be like a really nice.
Yeah, I forgot about Anthony being so young. He was definitely a guy who should have came up. And another dude is Jaden McDaniels, who we didn't bring up as well, who would have been insane defensively next to Wemby. Those are honestly, you could probably build a really interesting starting 5 out of a handful of guys we didn't pick.
100% as well. So let us know down below. Can you guys draft a better lineup than us? And which one do you think build a better team on Wemby between myself and Jay? We move on to the last segment of the podcast, and we're going to be doing another quiz. And for those who listened to the episode on Tuesday, this one's a bit similar to the last one. So in the last episode, we did a quiz trying to name the 10 players that played the most games with James Harden as he made his debut for the Los Angeles Clippers. Sadly, he didn't get the win the next. Actually, mollywopped them in the first game, but that's neither here or there. Jay, did you hear the news that Udonis Haslem has been hired as a player development coach for the Heat?
No, what the heck?
He just got hired today. I was going through Instagram and he got hired as a player development coach. Heat culture, baby. You can't leave it. It just sucks you back in. Ask Pat Riley. Ask all the other people. Alonzo Mourning was with the organization for forever. Right. So with Udonis Haslem back in the Miami Heat organization, I'm gonna need you to name me the top 10 guys that played the most games with him. Again, all these guys, it's not like James Harden where you have to look through multiple teams. You have to look through the Miami Heat, like the history books for Miami Heat players. Again, not a super old franchise, but man, there are a lot of players to choose from. So Jay, name me the top 10 guys who played with Udonis Haslem.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's one team, so it makes it a little bit easier. But at the same time, now you got to think about who stuck around with Heat culture long enough.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so we got to go with obviously Dwayne Wade. isn't
Yeah,
easy.
he almost doubled the next guy. He played 834 games with Udonis Haslam, almost doubled the next one. Just to tell you, so Dwayne Wade was number 1, 134. The lowest on this list is 215.
The lowest on this list is 215. So that means there's a world where like you might not have been around that long, low key.
Yeah, that's only
So
like
let's.
I think that's like 3 seasons, like probably. So yeah, not all like these guys like didn't play like some of these guys probably didn't play like too long with him.
So let me think about the championship squads because obviously those are the ones that click the most too. So Braun is here.
LeBron is number 6, 258.
Chris Bosh is here.
So LeBron was number 6. Chris Bosh is number 4, 297.
So Mario Chalmers would be here.
He's number 2, 473 games with Udonis Haslam.
Wow. It's like no, Alonzo Mourning wouldn't be here, would he? Is he?
He's number 10, 250.
He was their early career, yeah.
So the thing is, this is I was trying to think about it because like Alonzo Mourning was like an All NBA player with the Heat in like the early 2000s. This is when he came back after with the New Jersey Nets. This is like the end of career Alonzo. This is like when he played with him during like the 2006 NBA Finals. So
yeah,
this is old Alonzo, but yeah, he just cracks the list, 215.
Wow, that's insane. Okay,
but yeah, you know that thought about the Heatles days. Keep that thought.
Okay, so that means like maybe like Shane Battier is here.
Number 9, Shane Battier, 227 games. He played with Udonis Haslam.
Oh man, okay. Who else was on this team?
So you're missing number 3, 5, 7, and 8.
3, 5, 7, and 8. Who else was on? Oh, like one of the slowest dudes in early 2K history. It's like Joel Anthony on this list.
Number 3. I'm surprised he stuck with the Heat that long.
Yeah, dude. He was around for a while. I only know him from 2K to be honest.
329 games. Shout out to my Canadian man, Joel Anthony. But yeah, number 3 on this list. He played with Udonis Haslam.
Wow. Yeah, Joel Anthony was around for a long time in Miami.
He was. So you're missing number 5, 7, and 8.
What about like the time frame, like you said the 06 championship. So like what about like Shaq?
Shaq is on this list. He is
cool.
He is number 7, 240 games. So you're missing the guy right underneath him at number 8, and you're missing number 5. And I think both of these guys, I feel like were part of like the Heatles run.
Think so.
Yeah, I believe they're both part of the Heatles run.
Okay, so I guess that takes like Michael Beasley out then, right?
Michael Beasley, I don't think he stayed long enough with the Miami Heat before getting traded. Not gonna lie.
He wasn't in the league long in terms of like with the Heat at least.
Yeah.
What about when Jason Williams was on the Heat?
He was part of the 06 team, but he didn't play enough years with Udonis, so he does not crack the list.
Okay.
So funnily enough, Michael Beasley, actually, I underestimated how many games he played with him. He was number 12. He had a so he played with him. Also, Jason Williams is number 14. So pretty good guess, is not gonna lie.
Okay, so not too far back. Okay. So now I gotta. Who's somebody else that like?
One was a very solid backup. The other guy, garbage time minutes, but he was also just like a voice in the locker room type of guy.
Ooh, Norris Cole.
Number 2. He played more games with Udonis than LeBron did. 270 games with Udonis Haslam. So Norris Cole stuck around with them, and he ended up number 5 on this list. So yeah, you're just missing number 8 now. This guy was with the Heat like prior to LeBron joining, but he was like he kind of like joined the ride and like stuck around for like I think maybe like one of the championships.
Really?
Oh, no, he was there for both. You kind of associate with him, LeBron, not gonna lie. I feel like this guy's like LeBron's carry on. Like wherever he goes, he just kind of like follows.
Really?
Yeah.
What the heck? Okay, so that means it's not James Jones.
It is James Jones.
It is?
It is James Jones.
I don't view James Jones as his like carry on.
Yo, the minute LeBron left Miami, this man traveled to Cleveland with him.
Oh, true.
This guy was basically his carry on, bro.
Yo, that's mad true, bro. I didn't even think about it like that. I was gonna say like Eddie Jackson or somebody like that
Eddie
first,
Jones,
and then Eddie Jones. Yeah, Eddie Jones. And then
Eddie Jones is the first guy off this list, actually. So he's like number 11.
Oh, wow. Okay, because before you said LeBron, I was like, what? And then you said, before you said LeBron, I was thinking maybe it was Eddie Jones. And then you said LeBron's carry on. And I was like, okay, well, that's not right. And I'm like, wait, what? Oh, man, that's funny.
James Jones, 232 games with Udonis Haslem. not to this day James Jones, but this man literally fought LeBron out of Miami, bro.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, that's the list. Top 10 guys I played with Udonis Haslem. Other guys who are just off the list: Darrell Wright, Antoine Walker. Here's a name for you: Michael Doliak.
Oh man, I'm glad he didn't play too many games with them. I wouldn't got that.
I would not have got that.
No way.
Gary Payton, I'm surprised he actually like kind of cracked the top 20. Birdman Anderson was on this like near.
That would have been a good one. That would have been a good. If he hadn't played so long in Denver, you would have thought Birdman only played with Miami.
Right. Exactly.
Like to be honest.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a top 10 list. Let us know down below what other quizzes you want to see. Any other drafts you want to see as well? Let us know down in the comments below. Jay, we have reached another end of another fantastic episode. Thank y'all for watching. What do you have to say to these beautiful people before we sign out?
Hey, man, first week with 2 episodes. This is something that we're going to try to make a staple of the podcast throughout the majority of the regular season, so stay tuned. If you thought our conversation about the best 5 players 5 years from now was interesting enough, man, it's only going to get more creative from there. So I'm looking forward to a lot more Wednesday episodes as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is our time to flex the creative muscle. We're not going to try and, make this all NBA news. You got the Monday episode for that. But this episode, it's a bit more freelance, a little bit more, free thought and stuff like that. So if you want to catch up of topics like we did with this top 5 players in 5 years, the Wednesday episode is where it's at. And of course, you got the player spotlight and the rest of the staples of the show. So it's going to be another great episode coming to you next week as well. If you want to support any of our individual projects, those links will be found down below. Support the podcast in any way possible through any audio listens, the YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff. And of course, make sure you follow the TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. Thank you guys for watching this episode once again. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV signing out. That's Jay. Take it easy, guys. Peace.